So I'm Barak. I grew up in Long Island, New York for most of my childhood. Woodmere is the town specifically. I spent almost 3 years living in Israel in a city called Bourgana, which is on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. That was from kindergarten through second grade, or I guess through halfway through second grade. Uh, but outside of that, I was, born and raised in Long Island, New York. I now live in Tel Aviv, so I spend most of my life in New York, between New York City and Long Island. University stop in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and now I decided to move my family to Tel Aviv about 2.5 years ago, right before war and everything else kind of going on. I'm a father of three kids: 4-year-old Gabriella, uh, a 3-year-old Mayan, both of those are girls, and then a newborn Amiad, who is 2 months.
Congrats. That's awesome. So going back, how old were you when you going back to Israel, or you went to Israel?
When I was a kid, or
Yeah, when you were a kid.
um, so I was uh, 5. Um, it was right before I started kindergarten, however old we are.
Okay.
Right before we start kindergarten, I think it's 5.
Uh,
Uh,
and you were there for 3 years till you were 8.
I was there until I was 8. I left. It was almost 3 years, just shy of 3 years.
So how did that affect you, that change?
It's a great question. I think it actually changed me. I think it was probably the most uh, transformative, um, period of my life. The truth is, moving from New York to Israel when I was, 5, I don't recall it being, really difficult in any way or challenging. But going from Israel back to New York when I was 8, midway through the school year in second grade, that part of it, was really difficult. I was, lightly bullied, a lot of different aspects of it. Didn't feel like I really belonged. Had to kind of learn how to make friends. Fortunately, I was good at sports and happy to be kind of double click into any parts of it. But yeah, it really changed me. And I've thought about that a lot for my kids, because it's kind of this, catch 22, if you will, where, like, on the one hand, it was not easy. I'm describing it as difficult, almost entirely negative. Yet when I look back on my life, it's one of the things I'm most appreciative for, that, challenge to reintegrate into a culture I was not used to.
Yeah. So please double click on that. So you talk about bullying, you talk about change. Did you knew the language at the time? Did you speak Hebrew?
So yeah, well, no, not when I moved there when I was 5, but
Yeah.
I don't recall it being difficult to learn. And then when I lived in Israel, I lived in a pretty kind of bilingual community of a lot of Anglos, not just Americans, but British, Australians, South Africans, that kind of all lived in this community. So, like, my English was good, but uh, when I moved back to New York, we went to Jewish school where you also learned Hebrew, not, intensive, but there was a Hebrew class, and I obviously spoke Hebrew with a Israeli accent because I
Yeah.
learned Hebrew in Israel. And that was actually one of the things that was actually, bullied for, was at least early on, very lightly bullied, just like kind of teasing how I sounded like the Hebrew teacher, but not like any of them, with the way that they spoke Hebrew with an American accent. So I taught myself to speak Hebrew, not the way it's supposed to be spoken, like an Israeli, but how it's spoken like an American, so that I can kind of fit in better.
Oh,
There's
really?
probably many examples like
Oh,
that.
that's interesting. So it's like a reverse. You would think it would be the other way. Okay, that's interesting. And so you said sports. So sport help you how? Because you were too young. I was like 5. How did sport help you?
Word told me more when I moved back when I was 8,
Okay.
versus like when I moved there. So, like, I was just getting into sports when I was 5. I ended up, I was living in Israel, where the primary sport is soccer. So that
Yeah.
was, the primary sport I played. But, second graders in New York, at least back then, weren't playing soccer. They were playing basketball or American football, which I had, not really known much about, or baseball, softball. And so, um, my parents did sign me up for soccer in America, but it wasn't really like the friend group that I was in. And instead, I had to get good at like the other sports because I think boys in second grade, at least where I was, that was the fastest way to kind of make friends. If you were kind of good at sports, people wanted you on your team, people wanted to kind of be friends with you. And fortunately, I was athletic, so I kind of more or less stopped playing soccer for a while and just kind of got good at those sports.
Which sports?
All of them. Football and basketball were like the two primary ones, but then I started to also play softball and some other sports, and I enjoyed it. It's not like I ended up really liking those sports, but yeah, it was a big kind of transition, and a lot of just like cultural differences. Like um, one day, it was in second grade. I wore shorts to school, which wasn't actually permissible in the private school that my parents sent me to. And I didn't know that. I thought nobody wore shorts because it wasn't warm out yet. Uh, and then uh, when I found out, I kind of hid in the bathroom until they found me because I was like, lightly bully for it. I hid in the bathroom until someone else found me, and they kind of called for my parents' baby pants. Or another time, like someone just like skip me online, like coming back from recess. And I don't know, I guess I just like hit my point and I like ran away. Everybody thought I like really ran away, but I was just hiding behind like some trailers in like the back of the yard. But they had to like, basically PA the whole school and everybody out looking for me. Um, and yeah, I think those moments of feeling like not fitting in and wanting to, fit in, uh, teaches you a lot in hindsight. It teaches you, how to make friends, how to be empathetic, how to kind of connect closer to people. Also teaches you a little bit of independence and how to hopefully learn how to, build a self-confidence to be yourself. But sometimes being taken out of your environment and thrown into a new one, uh, and with the benefit of hindsight, is actually a really positive experience.
And you notice the differences. So you start, not taking things for granted, and you live in the same environment for a long time. You take a lot of things for granted. When you're transported to a different environment, then you start then noticing the gaps. It's like, oh, okay, we're missing this. I remember I was talking to Latan, and Latan said that when he had that same experience as a young person, went to Israel, and he was, toughened up when he was there. He felt like the Israeli kids had like extra skin. They were much tougher than in the US, in LA. So you went and then you came back. So how did you feel? You feel like these guys here are softies?
That's funny. No, it's definitely not how I felt, but I think it was all like I felt like these American kids are mean. But I think it all is a little bit of the perspective of like I think I don't know when they kind of moved, but like I think it's more a statement on kids that age versus uh, you know, the the country or demographics of where they're from.
Yeah.
Um, I was talking to a friend or over the weekend who has a first grade kid and in their or a second grade kid and in their school they have like this program that takes like three third graders, three second graders, three first graders, and like and kind of bring them to different people's homes like together, so they get to know like kids older and younger and kind of how to relate to each other. And he was reflecting that he was just like watching like the second and third graders, and they were just like mean kind of kids, and it's just like I think it's just kids like learning how to engage when parents aren't watching them, and
Yeah.
like all the things that they pick up on and what's kind
It's nice. So how did that experience inform the way you handled your kids moving to Israel?
it's one of the reasons I wanted to move when I did. So we moved to Israel a little over 2 years ago. We only had two kids at the time. My oldest was two, and my younger one was 6 months. And it was why it was important to me that if we were going to try to move to Israel and give it a shot, which I really wanted to do, my wife, uh, it was not on her big go card. I kind of pushed it, um, but I felt like it had to happen before they started kind of grade school. And still now my oldest is 4 turning 5. So in a year and a half, she starts first grade. And it's kind of important for me for that we like somewhat figure out where we're going to live. But then every once in a while, I like, you know, question myself where it's like, I feel like I benefited from this experience in hindsight. even if it might be more difficult if they move after first grade. Is it really a bad thing, or is it actually a good thing?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just one of the things that I've thought about.
Yeah, no, I think it's super valuable. I think like as long as you coach them through it, and you observed where they're challenged, I think it's a plus plus. They see they have different experiences.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, we moved a lot. I mean, so the big one was when we went to Hawaii, and they didn't have any friends, they didn't have any network, and I think Jack was 4, Isabel was around 6. And lucky for me, the best friends had also moved to England from California. They moved to England. We moved to Hawaii. So we started talking about what would you like? I want friends. What kind of friends? Good, bad, smart, dumb, funny, boring, engaged, not engaged, active, not active. So we created like an ideal friend profile, and then we had them go out and prospect for them. Go to the playground, go to the gym, and ask questions. Hi, my name is Jack. I like Garfield. What do you like? I like to eat pizza. What's your favorite food? I like to do jujitsu. What do you like to do? And if the kid is talking to you and engaged, that's your friend. If they're not, move on to the next kid. And yeah, very quickly discovered he didn't get along with kids that play video games too much, because that's all they want to talk about is video games. Even their physical in the playground, they want to talk about video games. So he figured that he likes kids who are into sports. He likes kids who are funny or like want to climb trees. Like any kid that likes climb trees, that's his best friend. And he's a tree climber. And then he clarified his profile, over time, and I gave him like a two. So once they find the kid, then they have to go to the parents and ask for a phone number. The script is very simple. Hi, my name is Jack. I like your son Joey over here. I'd like to invite him to a pizza party, pool pizza party. What's a good number to send the invite? And then so they had to bring 2 phone numbers a week for a period of like 6 weeks. They had like 24 fans. Like they became the hub of the social network.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
they never
That
had
is
to do it again. They never had to do it again. And so now they
wow.
know.
It's like building a company.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So when we moved to Florida, I didn't have to tell them anything. They just knew. And very quickly, they're like they have like a monthly pizza party at our house, and they have to fill it up. So every month we have like a crew. And then my daughter is now at a phase where she's refining. She's actually like top grading her network. So she wants certain people who read certain things, who want to do certain things, or into certain, like for her, like a friend has to have something that they love to do, that they do all the time. So whether it is you want to be a gymnast, or you want to be a swimmer, a competitive swimmer, or you want to be in acting, or you want to be public speaking, you have to have something. If you don't have anything, that's a signal for her that's not the right profile.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it does help. Yeah. And I mean, moving, yeah, yeah, it makes a big difference. So
You read Sovereign Child?
I've been on a Twitter spat with that guy. He's
Really? That's fun.
I'm not I don't understand how Naval kind of like fell into that trap. I think it's like a philosophical thing for him. He's not even convincing when he talks about it on, he was on the All In podcast last time, and he was kind of like
I heard him on
explain.
Tim Ferriss, but
Yeah, it's not even convincing. Even on Tim Ferriss, he wasn't convincing to me. I'm like, dude, this guy's crazy. I mean, ice cream and tablets all day. Yeah, have fun. Good luck.
I completely agree. Personally, I agree. But I also think that my positive takeaway was actually to do exactly what you did with your kids in that situation, which is not to just accept a reality, but instead to kind of help them creatively think of what are different ways to kind of problem solve that give them the agency to control their lives, which I
Yeah,
think is a big way to
100%. Yes, 100%. Just give them that first principle thinking. Like ask the question why. What am I maximizing for? Like I'm always asking him the question, oh, I want to do A, B, or C. What's the goal? What are we trying to maximize for? Is this the goal that you want? What's the goal behind the goal? And then eventually, once they clarify what they really, really want, then it's a lot easier to find how. And so I'm always, having that conversation with them. Also, like I spend quite a bit of time. I spend like 90 minutes a day with them every morning. So we talk about a lot of things. Okay, so going back to you. So here, you grew up in the US, Israel, back here. What was your parents' parenting style? How did they parent?
Uh, what was my parents' parenting style?
Yeah.
My, my,
They-
my, so I'm the oldest of four, which I
Okay.
think plays kind of a pretty big role in for a lot of children where you kind of fall in like the pecking order and how many siblings you have. Um, I was always relatively independent. One of the things that's pretty cool about living in Israel is like in first grade, I was walking to school like close to a mile on my own every day, like to and from, which is like pretty unheard of, at least where I then went to in Long Island. And I think that I attribute some of it to that, but I've always kind of been my mom's like insomniac and she doesn't sleep really at night, but she not always like if she falls asleep at 6, then the wake up at 7 is not always the easiest. But for a lot of my childhood, I set my own alarm, got myself to the bus. Like my parents were very involved in raising me. To be clear, it's not like I raised myself, but there were a lot of pieces that I just I always studied on my own. I always did well in school. That was like never really like they were pretty um, hands off with me and allowed me to kind of do what I wanted to do with like um sometimes encouraging me. So like I grew up in a religious Orthodox Jewish household, which I think plays a lot of role in the entire operating side. So as much as like there was still a lot of independence and I could, go to my friends, do my own thing, there was a emphasis on religion, and specifically kind of Orthodox religion and what is okay and what is not okay. Um, and I think it netted out to positive in my life. Um, to have structure, also to have kind of community built in. Um, I know it netted out to positive. There were parts of it that I did not really gravitate to, and I've been able to kind of I assume this is where the question is going, but like take the bits and pieces of I think what I liked. Let's just focus on religion. What I liked about religion as a kid, and try to bring that to my kids as a parent as well.
That's awesome. So what do you think your parents did well?
Whew, I did a lot well. I always view them as pretty involved and kind of always there. Like they knew my friend group, they knew their personalities, they knew who the more troubling people, kids were, and who were kind of the better influences. Um, they gave me independence to figure out who I was and to explore um, what I was good at in different ways. Um, and they showed me unconditional love. I think is actually the most important thing any parent can do.
And what do you think they should have done more of, or some things that they haven't done that they should have done?
I think it's more of a function of the community that we grew up in than necessarily kind of my parents. But there was a very insular community of kind of Orthodox Jews, and I only knew Orthodox Jews my entire life. And I think exposure to the world outside of it, and almost all of our vacations were to Israel to visit family because my mom wanted to be able to go see her family who all immigrated to Israel. And so I think being able to see more of the world would have been really helpful to me, whether it's through vacation, whether it's through living, whether it's just through friend groups and kind of getting to know people outside of the immediate, circle of school. I think there was also at times an emphasis on religion that left me with negative connotations towards religion, unlike you have to do this sort of things versus explaining why it can be, uh, you know, a positive kind of in society. And then I think lastly, something that always had a lasting impact on me was the uh, emphasis on kind of financial success within the community that I grew up in. It was just like, almost everybody sent their kids to like private Jewish schools. And I just remember at a very young age, like we're talking like sixth or seventh grade, like calculating how much a um, family would need to make in order to just afford the basics of life. And it's motivating, but it's also um, uh, really suffocating to kind of, like have that kind of financial anxiety. And I think you see it. It wasn't just my parents, but more again, community wise, where I grew up, where there was again, it wasn't so much on highlighting materialistic things that people had. It was just that you know you needed to only choose certain professions in order to kind of afford to live in that
Yeah.
community.
So how did you navigate those three things, as you growing up? How did you kind of explored outside, found friends outside of the community and did all that?
So I went to University of Michigan for college, which was actually pretty unheard of where I grew up. My parents would have preferred me to go to Baruch, which I got into kind of like a fleet, like they were going to pay me to go to kind of college and like the honors program in New York City. And instead, I chose to go pay $50,000 a year to go to uh, University of Michigan, kind of get out um, and explore. I think that was, uh, a pretty big one in terms of that exploration of what was accessible to me. Like in high school, I think a lot of that was less accessible, but it was like later on. Um, and then, yeah, I wasn't really like the rebellious type. So like once I was like within the confines of my family and the society, kind of like until I left the house when I was 18, I never really, did much to kind of break free, so to speak, um, to find that independence.
Okay, so essentially, but it was intentional that desire to go to school somewhere else in Michigan was, driven by the, wanting to be kind of like more independent and explore more.
Yeah, and see the world and explore different people. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So how you like culturally, how you grew up and how you grew up within your family, how does it inform how you raise your kids today?
Oh, in every way. I mean, it was one of my, I'd say, consciously or subconsciously, one of the big factors in choosing to move to a new country, which is a war-torn country, which probably should have known when you move to the Middle East. But so the last 2 years have been quite eventful. Yet they've been amazing because there's like there's a community here and like a deeper sense of fulfillment in the everyday mission of kind of what you're carrying out that just like feels so much bigger. And the truth is, religion never gave me that sense of fulfillment in that same way that I think it does for a lot of people. But like the Zionist mission of creating a Jewish democratic state is one. I grew up, being told a lot of stories of the Holocaust. All four of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And so that played a pretty big role of like almost like a fear based, you know, uh, sense of identity.
Yeah.
And so it feels good to have one that's more pride filled. I think that's what I wanted for my kids. Uh, as I mentioned, like I experienced at a young age the kind of independence that kids in Israel get that kids in the US just don't get. And I also wanted to get out of New York City because I just felt like it emphasized too many of the kind of materialistic things that I personally do not value, and I didn't want my kids to kind of be around. So now my kids go to a public school here. Now it's like a public, well, the older ones in the public program, and the younger one will be in it when she's old enough. Um, and mixed with a whole bunch of kids. I mean, it's mostly Jews because I live in Israel, but it's across the spectrum of ethnicity, race, background, um, parents. Um, everything you could imagine. You know, a lot of international folks, and so um, yeah, I've really enjoyed that, giving my kids that sort of experience that I think I wish I would have had.
Nice.
Again, I'm really appreciative. I think I wouldn't be who I am without it. But
Yeah.
but to try to take the best of what I saw, and through the privilege I have to try to create that.
And are you, is your wife Israeli too? Was she
Neither
from
of
the
us
US?
Israel.
Oh,
Yeah, we were both born and raised in.
born in the US.
My parents are both American too. My mom's side of the family just immigrated to Israel over the last like 30 years.
So
Both of us are American.
so is your wife
We're both Jewish though.
she's also, did she grow up in an Orthodox environment or no?
Yes, a little less so than I did, but yes, grew
Okay.
up in an Orthodox environment as well.
Okay. So does she have like as much PTSD as you do or no?
I don't even know if it's PTSD actually, but maybe it is. Just sitting here. She loved where she grew up. Her community was a more liberal uh, version of kind of Orthodox, so still
Okay.
modern Orthodox, but just um, more liberal, more open. She grew up in New York City, so like she had exposure to a lot of other people and kind of cultures, despite being in a more Orthodox, school setting.
Makes sense. And so are you raising your kids in the Orthodox Jewish faith or no? Or more
Yes,
liberal?
more or less, like our own kind of version of it, right? Like if it's a a binary, which I don't think it is, like I would say I don't believe in God yet. I observe full kosher, I observe full Sabbath. Um, but I think an Orthodox person would probably say I'm not Orthodox, and a conservative or reform person would say I'm Orthodox. Right? I kind of fall between what I describe as this conservadox line. I've kind of created like rules that I follow, and they're very close to the Orthodox Judaism rules, but not everything. Right? I want to actually see I want to understand the positive externalities associated with anything that I choose to keep,
So what are those rules?
like the Sabbath, for
Yeah.
example, right? Like not using any electronics, or getting in any vehicles or using any money, right? For one day a week from sundown on Friday until sundown on Saturday. Um, I observe relatively strict kosher diet in terms of what I eat and when I eat it. So like even for example, if I ate meat, we wouldn't eat dairy within 3 hours
Yeah.
of having eaten meat. Um, and a lot of other, I go to synagogue every Saturday and every Friday night. I go to prayer services multiple times during the week itself, and we choose to send our kids. Like in Israel, you could choose which kind of public school program they're in. They're in the Orthodox. There's different levels of the Orthodox, but they're in the more modern Orthodox kind of program. So there's a bunch of things that we keep. Those are like I'd say the bigger ones that affect the day-to-day life.
So what's your goal for your kids? What are like when you think about, okay, I'm raising these three beautiful kids. What is my vision? What is my goal with them as a father?
I want them to be confident in who they are. I want them to identify the things that they excel at, whether it's, hobbies or in the future professionally or creatively or whichever way that actually is. And I want them to be happy. I want them to really um, just feel happy with their life and who they are in whatever way is most authentic to them. Those are the biggest and most important things for me. That's kind of my goal to create an environment that allows them to do that.
So how do you get there? Aside from the environment, so I know you're big on the environment piece, which is very important, very valuable. But like, what are some of the activities, rituals, things that you would do, habits forming habits that you do with them that will give them those things, that will
Yeah.
create those things.
So our kids are still relatively young, right? So 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and 2 months. So let's leave 2 months aside because it's
Yeah.
limited to what you can do in 2 months. But for the 4-year-old and 3-year-old, I try to kind of listen to their curiosity and follow where their curiosity takes them and do my best to engage them where it is. Like so tonight when my girl was going to bed, we were I started teaching her this week how to kind of use ChatGPT,
Nice.
and asked her to kind of like help prompt her to kind of um, come up with stories of like that would make her happy, that would give her sweet dreams, and how to kind of like talk about it. And then recorded her kind of sharing the story. Had ChatGPT like write out a story, and then
Yeah.
a couple images and pictures with it. I think it's like just like I believe in engaging with technology, not trying to avoid it, but trying to turn it into positive. Same thing about like religion and what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
Like anything is a tool to kind of good or bad. And so we're trying to be careful about like which shows we encourage. And I say encourage versus allow, but like that's a clear distinction. Um, and yeah, I really try to make sure that I'm available. So like I'm fortunate in life where we didn't really kind of talk about the career side, but as you know, I kind of exited the company at a relatively young age. From my kids are still young, and I'm very conscious of the fact that I don't need to work. I choose to work because it fulfills me, and I think it's important. I also think it's important as a father to kind of show that to my kids, at least for me. But but I try to hold sacred the hour in the morning, the 2 hours after school, the weekend days that we have together, to make sure that I'm there, to not be traveling on the weekends, more than once or twice in a year, and just make sure that I'm around for that exploration, for that love, for understanding kind of who they are and how they're developing, etc.
That's awesome. So how do you nurture confidence?
I think to me the the uh the biggest thing that can actually affect someone's confidence is the inverse. It's how do you make your kids feel less confident in who they are, which I think it's, um, I'll talk about something I made a mistake in the moment and then, uh, wish I did it. So my 4-year-old was really excited to show me how we like let her like explore in the park, like, on her own. And then she like called me over. She wanted to show me how she like taught herself to climb on like these bars and hang by her legs kind of upside down.
Yeah.
And so, and I've done it with her in the past where I've helped her, but she like figured out how to do it on her own. So I was letting her do it on her own, and she fell, and like I saw her like go like this, and it freaked me out. I go back to the sour child, I was able to talk about, and I like, um, she was okay. They're like really freaked me out, and I was just like, "You can't do that. Like, you can't like go upside down by yourself." And I immediately regretted it because I think that's exactly how you hurt a kid's confidence when they're like so proud of what they're able to do and kind of do it on their own instead of jumping down. I try to be mindful to actually um, uh, give them praise for trying something, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's really like you can only control the inputs, you can't control the outputs of anything in life. And I think that's where confidence comes from, to explore and to do things, is to not be worried too much about risks. So I think that's one example. I also just try to uh like my daughter was playing basketball for a bit, like with this after school program. She doesn't seem like she was pretty good at it, and we're like encouraging that. But I don't think what instills confidence is the clapping. Oh my gosh, you're so good. I think if anything, that actually sometimes can work a child up where they feel like they don't do it, they disappoint their parents.
Yeah.
But I try to really like allow them to explore new hobbies rather than have to like force them into anything, because I think confidence comes from the exploration until you really feel good about what you're doing more intrinsically versus extrinsically. It's about self confidence, not confidence from ego.
Yeah. So how do you balance the whole exploring a lot of things versus sticking with something long enough to develop mastery and develop like identity in that thing? So how do you see that balance?
I was debating that with my wife, yesterday, because her perspective was like, some things you do gotta like push because you don't want them to feel like they could just quit it, kind of move on to the next one. I think it's an age thing. I mean, at the age that my kids are at, I would rather them find the things they really enjoy doing and choose to kind of pull themselves towards it. I think like we tend to master the things that give us energy that we want to spend time with. And uh, you know, after a couple of times, I believe kids, just like parents and adults, do know that they enjoy doing. It's not like we're trying to ever discourage them away from something, but if like they're clearly not energized by going to do it, they're probably not going to master it, or they're going to master it out of, all the wrong reasons. And I think you hear horror stories of like even athletes that hated the sport that they played in, but they did it because they were, felt the pressure to kind of like do it and be there. And so I, I didn't say anything about mastering kind of what I want for my kids, because I actually don't think that that's what gives the, happiness or everything else. I think that um, getting good at something requires like that intrinsic self confidence that you feel good at it, and it's what you really want to be exploring. And I think that comes from what gives you energy for adults and for kids. That would be my first quick reaction to it.
Okay.
So
So
right now I haven't encouraged mastery too much.
yeah. In our for us, we I grew up doing martial arts, and I wanted them to have like to be able to defend themselves and learn how to handle situations when they're being bullied or whatever. So they were in taekwondo, they were in jiu-jitsu. They liked it, but they didn't like it. And then, but we said no. You're just gonna there's one sport you're gonna stick with, and there's one sport that you can pick whatever you want. So we give them two sports. One they can change on it whenever they want, and one they have to stick with. So jiu-jitsu was one where they stuck it out for maybe a year or so, where they didn't like it, and then they found a really good gym, a really good club, and now they love it. Now it's like we're getting our black belts. There's no if or but about it, and that's them wanting that. And they do swimming, they do gymnastics, do other things. So those can rotate based on the cycle of life they're in, or
I like that. Giving me
what
single certain
trends.
things, but try to push in others.
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
I think there's a point where they develop, when someone outside tells them, "Oh, you're good at this," and then and not you, but someone else, and then all of a sudden it becomes like, "Oh, okay, I'm really good at this." Or maybe there's a situation where some bully comes in, and they were able to defend themselves, and they recognize the skill that they have and the power it gives them, and then boom, that becomes something that they have as part of their identity. That they stand up for their friends, they can defend their friends, they can defend themselves. And so there's a transition that happened, but they never get there if you keep pivoting.
Right.
And so you talked about technology, you mentioned technology.
I can't think of anything in my own life where that was the case. But maybe it's more personal. Like I feel anything that was um felt forced. I never really kind of turned the corner and
But
ended
I
up
think,
loving it.
well,
It
I
was
think the
because
the when you, if you look back and your environment was different than theirs, your environment was less abundant than theirs, and
right.
then your environment was a little bit more constricted by the type of sports that the kids played in your network, in your environment. So you really did have a lot of choices, but not a ton. The kids today have like everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? And with everything, the more choice, the less, decisions are being made, and it's a lot harder for that. And that was the argument against with the guy, the sovereign child guy. And I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you think that kids are growing up in a vacuum. There are like multi-billion-dollar companies that have the best tech, the best science, the best everything, and the money to influence, to you know what I mean, to influence these kids, to
Yeah.
influence their,
That was the same thing I was thinking.
yeah. I'm like, nuts. They're not on their own. It's not like they're making decisions on their own.
I mean, specifically when it came to food, because I just think
Yeah.
like a lot of big food is the devil. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Food, everything. So yeah. So let's double click on that technology piece. What's your thinking around technology, screen time, all that stuff?
yeah, so I haven't had probably the same challenges that I hear other parents have just because of my age, my kids' ages, right? Like 4, 3, and 2 months, right? Like there's no cell phones going around. Um, I mean, the last 2 years of all their lives was focused on a war and running away from rockets. So like a different sort of, like challenge. But our general, right now philosophy towards it is like I mentioned, kind of the chat GPT and trying to encourage her. That's what I hope to try to be able to encourage kind of positive use without having to actively, limit. They watch TV shows. We really only watch PBS oriented shows for um, both of their like first 3 years of life, which was like Daniel Tiger. Uh, there's like Malia Denali. There's like a lot of these more educational ones, and then now they watch also Paw Patrol and started watching Disney movies and all the other things. But like outside of that, there isn't much technology kind of involved in our lives. I think that I've noticed myself with technology more with them. I wish I could be further away from my phone sometimes. Um, but I think I'm relative to the masses pretty good, but relative to what I hold myself accountable, not as good. And I think that that's going to be an important factor in how they view technology, is how my wife and I engage with technology. But outside of that, they're still young, so it's not. it hasn't been as much of a burning
Yeah.
stressor.
But yeah, the bar now is like if you can go to a restaurant and sit without handing the phone to a kid, then you're good.
Yeah.
The challenges now are insane. So from an education standpoint, what's your like if your kid comes to you, um, when they're 14, 15, and your kid says, "Hey, I want to start a startup, a tech startup," what would you tell them? What would be your advice?
If they came to me, I start a tech
Yeah.
startup, I would say, go talk to my boy Jay. He's going to teach you how to write your ideal customer profile, perspective, how to, get the door slammed on you. No, I mean, that would be incredible win, just the fact that they kind of asked. And then I would sit down and explore with them. Like, do you have an idea? How do you think about it? But I would absolutely encourage them to kind of build and probably fail. Um, but I guess that goes back to what you were saying and kind of like pushing past that point, because uh, we all know how hard it is to build anything, especially kind of a company. They're unlikely to be successful, but kind of like um, showing them the wins and getting those lessons, but allowing them to more or less do it on their own with some light advice and support here and there. That would be kind of my approach.
That's awesome.
And to find something that really, care about solving. Like,
Yeah.
don't try to build a B2B SaaS tool at 14. Like, find something you care about. And there's a guy in the post-founder community whose son is one of the largest YouTube um, uh, YouTube channels for AI images. He creates like these AI images with stories, and it like took off. He's like
Is it
15.
Gary?
It's like 10. Yeah, Gary's
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
He's
have you
amazing.
interviewed him?
Yes. Oh, not yet. Not yet. Not
Amazing.
yet. Yes.
You should.
Yes.
So,
Well, on that note, I appreciate it, Barak. I know you got, we got delayed with the technical, but I appreciate you taking the time. This was great.
thanks for inviting me, Jay. So good
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.